It was interesting that some of the Quranic verses that I read attack the Arabs of the peninsula in a similar fashion to those used against the Christians, the Jews and the pagans. Will you explain why?
Muhammad's Quran is an equal opportunity hate-mongering book. Not only does it attack and insult the Jews and the Christians, but does the same to his own brother and sister Arabs, who are supposedly of the Ummah of Muhammad, and whom he was attempting to convert by bribery, terror, or slaughter. The verses that I shall quote from the Quran will not make sense to any listeners unless and until they also read about the actual background of each event. I shall try my best to explain them, and those among the listeners who may think I am deceiving them can read them in any Quran that also contains explanations. Surah At-Tawbah, chapter 9, verse 90. And there were among the desert Arabs men who made excuses and came to claim exemption, and those who were false to Allah and His Apostle sat inactive. Soon will a grievous penalty seize the unbelievers among them. The interpreters of the Quran, as usual, do their best to whitewash a very treacherous and bloody event called the Tabuk expedition, when many of the followers of Muhammad refused to go to war against the Byzantines. 997. The Arabs of the desert are the worst in unbelief and hypocrisy, and most fitted to be in ignorance. 998. Some of the desert Arabs look upon their payments as a fine, and watch for disasters for you. On them be the disaster of evil. The payments alluded to above is called zakat, and was imposed upon his followers by Muhammad, and his cannot be called charity, especially since it was a form of taxation to increase the purse of Muhammad so that he can buy more arms to conduct his acts of terror against all other Arabs, the so-called unbelievers, as well as a means to bribe others into the new faith. Nothing of the above is sacred. Chapter 9, 101. Certain of the desert Arabs round about you are hypocrites, as well as desert Arabs among the Medina folk. They are obstinate in hypocrisy. Twice shall we punish them, and in addition shall they be sent to a grievous penalty. Contrary to all the allegations and contumacy made against the ordinarily peaceable desert Arabs, the facts are that it was Muhammad and his followers who forced most of them to turn to piracy and terror against their own kith and kin, as well as against all those who did not believe in Muhammad as Allah's messenger. It is typical of most criminal minds to project upon their victims their own criminalities and demented characteristics. Moreover, all the reports that we have available about the pagan Arabs were propagated and later written by the victorious Muhammad and his followers, who made them look as if they were evil, bloodthirsty, treacherous, treasonable, and wily people who sacrificed humans and especially little girls. Nothing could be further from the truth, since when one studies, and I always repeat the word studies, in detail their poetry, the ahadith and many unbiased reports, they turn out to have been far superior to any followers of Muhammad. The historical records of Muhammad and Islam, as written by his followers, show very clearly that it was a movement that started with the shedding of a sea of Arab blood to start with. Then it was propagated through the shedding of an ocean of innocent blood on 3 continents, and continues even today by the shedding of more blood without discrimination between believers or unbelievers. Chapter 9, 120. It was not fitting for the people of Medina and the Bedouin Arabs of the neighborhood to refuse to follow Allah's apostle, nor to prefer their lives to his. Since every verse in the Quran actually represents Muhammad's own alter ego, it is then no wonder that almost all of them reflect his own state of mind at that moment of time, and are conveniently revealed at his own beck and call to command his followers to whatever he wanted them to do in the name of the unsuspecting Allah, the pagan supreme rock god of the Kaaba. Surah Al-Fath 48:11. The desert Arabs who lagged behind will say to thee, we were engaged in looking after our flocks and herds and our families. Do thou then ask forgiveness for us. 48:16. Say to the desert Arabs who lagged behind, you shall be summoned to fight against a people given to vehement war. Then shall ye fight, or they shall submit. Surah Al-Hujurat 49:14. The desert Arabs say, we believe. Say, you have no faith. But ye only say, we have submitted our wills to Allah, for not yet has faith entered your hearts. If the desert Arabs loved fighting and plunder, then there would have been no reason to have all the above verses allegedly revealed. The desert Arabs usually fought to defend themselves, their animals and their grazing lands. They were not wanton warmongers like Muhammad and his followers. Of course, these illiterate Arabs did not, in the end, win the wars of aggression conducted by Muhammad and his thugs against them, who became the victors and hence rewrote history to suit their own agenda. Not a single verse above, nor any of the explanations given by the later followers of Muhammad fit either the truth, logic, or reality. All of them are used to criminalize their innocent victims so that the actual perpetrators of all evil get away with murder by contorting, perverting, and twisting both history and facts. For the last 1400 years, Muhammad and his followers have been able to deceive and fool people who are ignorant of the Arabic language of the Quran and Hadith into believing that Muhammad was a prophet and that Allah is God. Slowly, but most assuredly, more and more people around the world are realizing the falsity and mendacity of what they have been and are being taught.